Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Tonight, I have the honor and privilege of being joined by my friend and brother, Knowledge King, and I wanted to interview him on his book, The Silent Work. Now, as a student of Masonry and Sufism and other disciplines, this is one of the greatest books that I have read. And I recommend all of you to check this book out and support this great, beautiful work and apply those teachings from these books practically to your life. And I was so fascinated by the wisdom. I'm like, you know what? I gotta have Brother Knowledge King on here and just kind of give the gist of everything. So, without further ado, welcome, my brother. For those that don't know you, please tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got started into this, and yeah, inshallah. And I'll put the link in the description below for all of our viewers to check out the book. So, yeah, please take it away.
Thank you. So as you said for the introduction, I want to that. My name is Knowledge King. So I actually studied psychology. I got my graduate degree in counseling, and I have a undergrad in psychology. So my journey actually started with me studying psychology and a little bit of esoteric knowledge. Every once in a while, I'll pick up a esoteric book, the Kybalion, the Master Key System, As a Man Thinketh, which is one of my favorite books. Um, but as I got deeper into esoteric studies, I would say more so, for lack of better words, becoming a practitioner of some of these esoteric sciences, I began to merge the two together from the psychology to the esoteric knowledge. I realized that the inner teachings were dealing with the inner mind, which is, the soul. Because psychology actually means the study of the soul. It comes from the root word psyche, which means soul. And so, this is how the silent work um, actually began for me. Of course, doing these things myself, but then actually merging everything together, just as a practice.
Alhamdulillah, and I think that's beautiful, brother, because you actually hold a professional background in terms of being a psychologist, and plus, your spiritual background and studies, and which goes to my question is that you intentionally
Mhm.
avoid making this feel like a typical self-help book. Now, what makes your approach to transformation different from most modern spiritual or motivational content that's out there?
Yeah. Just a second. So, a lot of modern self-help books focusing on adding something to yourself, more habits, more motivation, more strategies. The silent work is different because it focuses on uncovering what's already there. So I'm less interested in the hype and more interested in inner observation. So I'm not I'm not here necessarily to tell you, oh, read this book and this is going to happen. It's more so like experience this knowledge and see what's actually there. So that was the motivation behind it.
Yeah, that's beautiful because I mean, there's a lot of like stuff out there these days, and I think you when I read this book, it basically told us to surrender, right? Surrender to the higher power and be still, and just know
Mhm.
thyself. That is the greatest gift that we can give ourselves, and I think you teaching that in this book, it really helped us, especially now where there's like so much information and content. I think something like this kind of like brings you to the ground, which goes to my next question, my brother, is that your work feels symbolic and layered, almost like it's speaking on multiple levels at once. Why was it important for you to write that way instead of being completely direct?
Yeah. Because so I understood there's a difference between speaking about transformation and going through transformation, right? And a lot of times we gain knowledge about transformation and we intellectualize it. We we um we don't embody it. And so when I began becoming a practitioner of some of these esoteric sciences, I kind of understood what the symbols were doing, the inner workings of these symbols. They were bypassing the intellect, and the transformation would begin, and it would begin to happen very subtle within myself. And about time I actually realized it, about time it came to the surface and I was conscious of it, it already taken place. And so in those moments, I may go back and read something, but I have a different level of understanding about it because of the inner process that I have went through. So I wanted to give the reader that same experience, right? And through studying Carl Jung and his breakdown of the subconscious and how symbols speak through the subconscious, and through my own experience, I knew that if I created a veiled chapter and an unveiled chapter, it was it was like a microcosm of the greater experience.
Indeed, indeed. And as somebody myself who's an initiate of many different groups and orders, this book felt like a journey, right? Like each layer of the onion was being revealed, and it was like a degree, right? Every
Yeah.
stage in every chapter, and even the gates that you described in the book, it was like each degree was being revealed of light and knowledge and love, and one that you could apply to your life. So
Yeah.
that's beautiful. You did it that way, which goes to my next question. Many people today consume endless information but still feel spiritually empty. Do you think knowledge alone can transform a person? Like, is there like a difference between all of that?
Yeah. So no, knowledge alone, it can't transform a person. So we live in a time where people consume endless information but still feel lost. And the reason for that is because, so in my book, right, the first thing I talk about that you mentioned is surrender and descent. And I think that that is foreign to a lot of people that deal with spiritual knowledge or even esoteric knowledge, because they usually read about the ascension, right? Ascending higher, becoming more, becoming greater. And I'm saying no, descend, surrender and descend, and actually see what's there. And the reason why I do that is because I'm really just giving an honest assessment of this inner journey, right? You don't gain knowledge and then become greater. You gain knowledge and you allow it to work on you, work through you, and in that process you start to see the change. And really you are the only one seeing the change until it's self-evident. So the information only informs you, and knowledge can be validated into a certain level of knowing, as in it can be proven. But what I give you in the silent work is what they call experiential knowledge, to where you will actually experience something internally to know that it's true.
Yeah, and that's beautiful because I know even with knowledge, there's like a learning phase of knowledge and there's an application phase of knowledge. And what you're
Yes.
teaching here to the student is the experiential knowledge. Like, okay, because experience is indeed the best teacher. And I
Mhm.
think you laid that out perfectly here, even with your professional background and initiatic background. I was able to take much from this, alhamdulillah, and I recommend everyone do the same. Which goes to my next question, that you mentioned that pain can become a catalyst for transformation. How did suffering shape both you and the message behind the silent work? Even if you look at the Sufi path, right? Rumi says that the wound is where the light enters. So why is it necessary for us to go through these pains in order for us to grow?
um it comes to a point to where a person can't suffer no more without facing themselves, right? And this is, and I'm speaking personally, but I think a lot of people can relate. A lot of times we experience pain over and over again, and we suppress it, and it just gets to a point to where that suppression can no longer happen. And the journey of turning inward starts when is there's nowhere else to turn. You can't go to family, you can't go to friends, you can't go here, you can't go there, and so the only place is to turn inward. And that's what happened to me. It was to the point to where certain things, um, it just was surfacing because I was dealing with so much in the moment, and then things from my past were surfacing, and I had no place to turn but within because I really didn't have nobody but myself, and that was the start of the silent way.
Indeed, indeed. And that reminds me a lot of even the Sufi path and these different paths out here, which tell us that when we're seeking for Allah, God, we might look in a church, we might look in a mosque, masjid, temple, but it's in a place where we least expect, which is inside the human heart, where we must know thyself in order to know thy Lord. And I think you laid it out in a beautiful way where we must understand ourselves, our strengths, our weaknesses, who we are, and how we choose to move forward with what we've experienced. And I think the silent work touches upon that in a very, very beautiful way, which goes to my next question. For someone hearing about your work for the first time, what would you say is the biggest misconception people have about inner transformation, especially now with like just so much information out there?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think people assume that transformation means becoming something different overnight. But real transformation is usually quieter than what people expect. Um, I think that we live in a time where spirituality is performative. It's very well much people want you to see that they're spiritual or see that they're enlightened or see these things. And the transformation is silent. The person who's really transformed and really has went through the fire and really embody a certain level of consciousness actually doesn't speak about it as much as people who wants to perform it. um, and that's the point of my book, is that when you go through this process, it's actually a process that's very hard to explain, just because of the inner experiences that begin to happen within you. It's just something that you live. So I think the misconception is going through the inner transformation. Uh, you want everybody to see, right? And that part of the human being is the ego. The ego will take on the spiritual identity and begin to perform transformation. So, I think that's the biggest misconception.
Indeed, indeed. And, you're right. I think the main thing is the spiritual surrender. And that's one thing I've taken away from the silent work is that we got to let just things flow and we have to surrender and not let our ego and other things get in the way. We have to know, okay, what did I learn from this situation? How do I apply it from my life and how do I move forward? And one of the great chapters I read in your book is chapter 4, which is living as the light. And how would you describe that in today's chaotic world, Brother Knowledge King, about all this craziness that we're dealing with? People are just acting crazy with self and others. People don't have patience anymore. How do we apply this knowledge in our practical life, especially living as the light in today's world, which is like changing by the minute?
Yeah. Um, I would say living as the light is as simple as you being aware of yourself, your patterns, your reactions, all of those things. and understanding how to maneuver in this world consciously. Living as the light is living consciously, being consciously aware fully of yourself in every moment, which isn't easy. And I mentioned throughout my book that there will be times that you will forget. And it's not about you forgetting, it's about how gracefully you come back to yourself consciously. So every time you forget, uh, come back to yourself consciously. And in every moment, choose to live consciously. You see, that's living as the light is, remembrance, remembering who you are and your purpose and what you're doing this for in those moments, which when it's continuously practiced, it brings a level of peace to where things in the outside world won't move you as much. You will start to begin that to see that things that once bothered you don't fluster you anymore. So it's a continual practice living as the light. It's not something that one just begins to do and continues to do it. It's a thing that's a person does, forgets, and comes back to. So it's a practice.
Yeah, you're right. Everything is indeed a work in progress, and we must be patient and just deal with it step by step, day by day, knowing that each brick is basically putting the layers of that temple within us
Hmm.
of Almighty God. And it's beautiful because I've seen so much stuff out there, and nobody is telling us to basically just look within. And the chapter 2 of your book, Understanding the Inner Voice, really touched me because it's like what Prophet Noble Drew Ali says, that in order to find Allah, we must look within inside the human heart. So, how did this inner voice in your moments of chaos and heartbreak and betrayals that you went through in your life? How did this inner voice guide you on the who, what, where, and why, and how to navigate through those struggles? And whoever is listening to it, I hope they benefit from your wisdom as well, inshallah.
So I found that inner voice in silence. I think we all have moments of premonition or intuition, right? Something, oh man, something told me to do that and you didn't do it. But when I was able to decipher what that inner voice really was, it was when I really sat in silence. Um, I think that's what it takes, right? Because the voice the inner voice is still, and it's not loud. It doesn't yell. It's kind of like instinctual in a sense, because in the moment it may tell you, hey, get out of there. But it came through a feeling, but you heard it, and you may choose to ignore it or you may choose to act upon it. But to really understand what that voice is being able to sit in silence. And I think that a lot of us have a problem with sitting in silence, because when you try to silence your mind, that's not what happens. And so this is why you have to, shed away the things that's there. You have to actually identify the roots of your pain, the roots of your anger, the roots of your insecurities. Because once you're able to understand those things and you're able to get those things to shed away, the voice actually gets louder. Not as in it's yelling, but it's more potent. You know what I'm saying? But until that moment, it's just glimpses of it, right? So sitting with yourself in silence and actually understanding yourself and being with yourself, the voice actually becomes louder. It becomes more like your voice. It becomes like what you're speaking is what is speaking, because you become one with your own consciousness.
And that's beautiful. And it reminds me a lot of an Islamic hadith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, tells us that once you tap into that frequency, basically you become the vessel, your eyes and ears and
Mhm.
hands, like basically you become that being. Allah sees through your eyes, acts through your hands, speaks through your voice, and how basically in the Sufi path we were told that the Creator has made us the vicegerent representative of God on this earth. And with that free will and accord, that intellect and akal, we are told basically to live our life right from wrong and know that we've been given that free will to know thyself and to understand the world around us. And I think, that's beautiful. Once we know thyself and tap into that voice, it really becomes like a beautiful, beautiful spiritual experience and something you do have to experience, and it's kind of hard to describe. And I think what you laid out here in this book, in the silent work, I think this is something that I have not seen before. I'm a Sufi student from Pakistan. I've been through the sciences and initiatic paths, and I've been through the different systems here in the States as well. But I think this is something that you wrote from the heart, and I truly benefited from it. And it goes to my next question is that we have our brothers and sisters here in the West who are dealing with all these different groups, let's say the five percenters, the Moors, Masonry, et cetera, the Sufi path. What is the greatest advice that you could give them in terms of not only from your life experience and book, but in general, so they are not led astray, right? That they stay on the right path.
Um, my greatest advice is always to understand the ego. Um, in the 5% nation, we say that ego is easing God out. And what I've come to learn through study, meditation, and just the esoteric sciences is that the ego it is fighting to survive. Its nature is identity. The ego is not necessarily bad, but it's the immature part of you, and so it's consistently fighting for identity. So it could take on the identity of a Mason. It could take on the identity of being, a Sufi mystic. It could take on the identity of being more. And a lot of times we fall into the ego with the knowledge that's given to us, and that that is why you see a lot of the separation and the back and forths, instead of us understanding that we all live by the same universal principles. The culture may be different in each fraternity or organization, but the universal principles are all the same. We are telling one truth. We may focus on different aspects of those truths, but we are telling one truth. It's all universal principles. It's all universal laws. But I think when the ego gets involved and it takes the form of whatever identity we have taken on, because most of us identify with our religion. We lose the identity of self and we just identify with our religion or fraternity, right? If you're in the Western, initiation system. Um, and so that usually causes separation of us looking at differences instead of being consciously aware and seeing, the universal truth in everything. So that would be the advice that I have for anybody in those schools of thought.
And that's beautiful because even in my studies, I came to that same conclusion, right? Where it's all about know thyself. Noble Drew
Yeah.
Ali with the Moors is telling the same thing: find Allah in your heart. The 5% Nation is telling you to find Allah within. The
Mhm.
Sufi path is telling you to find Allah within. The Masonic stuff is the same, right? You are the temple. We're giving you the tools now. Rebuild the rough ashlar to the smooth ashlar, which goes to my next question, my brother, is that in today's world of, let's say, the ego and short attention spans, how do we bring ourselves or center ourselves practically for us to be able to listen and receive and speak and understand from the heart and in like manner with all beings?
I think the first thing to understand is that it's a slow process. I think a lot of times we come up upon information, and we try to actually become that tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like we try to be like, okay, I got this information, and I think that the thing is the key to embodiment is sincerity. That's the key to the heart. And honestly, I learned that in Sufism. As I shared with you, I studied Sufism. Very, very like it was a short amount of time, but I gained a lot from it. Sufism is the path of the heart, and you travel the path of the heart through sincerity. And so when it comes to slowing down, you know, it can start with 5 minutes a day of affirmations, 5 minutes a day of self talk, 5 minutes a day, or even 3 minutes a day. You know, whatever is good enough for you, and then you build on that. And when, let's just say, you choose affirmations, you know, it's the sincerity in your heart that determines whether those affirmations work. You know, so if your affirmations is rooted in inner transformation, it's the sincerity that you have, right, that determines whether that actually takes place, because everything in the heart deals with purity. So if your intentions are pure, then the heart takes it in. If the intentions are not pure, it's not received, right? So I would say when it comes to slowing down, you know, start small and build up if that's where you're at. It doesn't, that doesn't mean that because somebody can do something longer than you or whatever that they're better than you. You know, everybody has to start where they at, and so that is a level of just being honest with yourself, and from there, being sincere about your intentions is where things actually take root. If you're not sincere, you're just going to perform. But if you are sincere, you know, you're going to embody.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because the intention of what they call in Arabic your niyyah, if your niyyah is pure, then your prayers are accepted. And
Hmm.
I think you brought us to that forefront of basically being honest with ourselves and our intention, and how basically in order to tackle any problem or issue in your life, first you got to be honest with yourself about what you're dealing with and how to deal with it. Once you come to that conclusion, you already halfway solved your issue by first admitting that there was something. And one thing that I really loved in your book is the concept of just talking to yourself, like, hey, is there something that I could have done better? How could I improve myself? What did I choose to be today? I really love that in your book about improving upon that character every day. And in terms of, like, let's say living in high stress environments today, especially our black and brown communities, of how crazy it is in the city areas, what meditative practices or disciplines can you recommend to our brothers and sisters who are just dealing with the chaos every day?
Wow. You know, I'm a answer this. I've been asked this, and I always refer people to the book. But um, it to me is it's a very simple meditation. Um, I always like one thing that worked for me was learning to quiet my mind, and the reason for that, well, in the moment, I didn't really understand why that stood out to me because I was just reading about meditation, but I always heard, you know, the masters or the sages or mystics, they will always say quiet your mind. It does two things, right? When you it shows you what's there, right? So in the beginning of quieting your mind, you know, you actually see all the chaos that lives there because you consciously quiet your thoughts, so you consciously stop thinking, but then you kind of slip down into the subconscious and you see what's there. And in those moments, when you're in that moment, observe what's actually there. Don't run from it. Don't deny it. Don't judge it. Don't shame yourself. Just observe what's there. Because with observation, excuse me, you can begin to trace the roots of what actually lives in your subconscious mind, right? And so if you take the time to say, okay, I'm gonna quiet my mind, I'm gonna consciously quiet my mind. And once that happens, you observe every thought that comes to the surface with no judgment, with no shame, with no denial. What begins to happen is those thoughts that you observe, you can consciously, if you don't like what you see, you can consciously change that into something else over and over and over again. And you will slowly begin to change yourself internally and change your reality externally.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, you're right, my brother. First, we have to recognize the scenarios and environments around us, and then we must put it into practice on how we can change those things in our lives. Which goes to my next question is that you're not only a spiritual teacher, but you also come from a professional psychology background. And I know
Mhm.
in our communities, in our black and brown communities, even the Pakistani community, going or getting help for mental health or going to a psychologist is always something that's looked down upon. And our communities suffer so much, right, in terms of the environment, let's say the racism in America, the different communities that we're in,
Mhm.
and just the different psychological and spiritual and emotional challenges that we go through. So, someone that is not only a spiritual teacher, but also a professional, how do you integrate all of that in your practice? And the second is like, in terms of those that are struggling to get help, what do you tell them? The stigma from the communities of actually seeking help to better yourself.
Okay. And I just want to say this, I'm still in my graduate program to become a counselor. I am a RBT, a registered behavioral therapist, and I work with autistic kids, but I'm not a practicing counselor just yet. But I will answer your question to the best of my abilities. Um, I think that a lot of people, black and brown, don't necessarily like counseling because a lot of the research is culturally biased. And the way that they use this research, it doesn't pertain to the everyday struggle with black and brown people. And so a lot of people, and then a lot of black and brown people also feel like if they're going to a psychologist or a counselor, they're going to, try to diagnose them. And don't nobody want to be diagnosed or told that they're crazy. So what I would say to this is I think that mental health is very important, and there are many things that an individual could do to help with their mental health. But when it goes to the counseling route, I think that people should seek out somebody that they're comfortable with. I don't think that you should take the first person that offers their services. If you are to the point to where you like, I need to talk to somebody or I'm gonna just try it out, you should talk to somebody that you feel comfortable with, somebody that you can relate to, somebody who understands you, somebody where you don't feel judged. Because it's the experience will allow you to be more open and allow you to get more help. As far as things outside of mental health, outside of counseling, I would say that the foods that you eat, the daily activities, time to yourself, being out in nature, uh, being around people, good people, um, the things that you take in mentally, and I could keep going. All of these things affect your mental health. So there has to be a balance of like your everyday life, just socially, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Um, for those who still refuse counseling or mental health, if you can balance those five things, you would be okay. I don't know how you would attack trauma or childhood trauma or whatever, relationship problems or things like that. Um, but as far as just daily mental health, if you do those things, you'll be better off than the average person. I could say that.
That's absolutely beautiful, and I think that's exactly what I was looking for in terms of having the courage just to be true to yourself, right? Like when you
Yeah,
need help, get the help, and
yeah.
live a good, clean, healthy life in terms of spending time in nature, exercising, resting properly, eating and drinking properly. Which goes to my next question: is that in terms of like the spiritual perspective of knowing thyself, how do you operate in a world that's like stacked with consumerism, right? Where they want us to listen to the violent rap music or be involved like in the entertainment industries or sports industries or let's say just like the life in general where everything is like a low vibration setting where they just want us to be consumed with sports and alcohol and music and entertainment in today's world, especially affecting our communities. How do you navigate through that, and especially our young men and women that might be listening to this?
So for me, and this may come out vague, but it's just maturity. I don't get consumed in that, in those worlds because I know what they are, which is illusion, right? Um, there's groups of people who prey on consumers, and they now we got the algorithm to where the point where everything you do, to even if you say something around your phone, you got ads on your phone, so that lets you know that there are people who are rich, who want to stay rich and will do anything to be rich, and they use other people as pawns to push this agenda. It's just that simple, beyond any conspiracy theory. That's just what it is. And so I don't over consume myself with it. I do like certain forms of entertainment, like I do watch boxing, I do listen to music. I try to balance it out. I read a lot. I spend time with my kids. I do a lot of other things outside of just listening to violent rap music, and I really don't listen to violent rap music no more. Just this is a transparency thing. I'm weaving myself off of it. I was raised up on it. I do like it, but I see where it takes my mind, and I don't want to live in that place. So for me, living in this world, it starts with knowing what that is, knowing that it's an illusion put in your face just to make people rich and keep you poor. Like studying psychology, and I'm a kind of be a little long winded. I hope you don't mind. But studying psychology, I learned that systemic racism, systemic anything, right, is is passed by politicians, but these things are created by sociologists, psychologists, and when you're talking colonialism, anthropologists. They put it in psychology books in school, but they just use a certain level of terminology that if you don't understand what they're really saying, then you don't get it. But like for instance, and this is something that people talk about, right? But why did people start investing in prisons? Why is there private prisons? Because psychologists were determining that if you grew up in an urban community, in an impoverished community, without a father, without this, without that, you know, because of these variables, that you were going to end up in prison at least one time in your life. And people seen that was a profit, so they invested in it. So this happens. This don't just happen with prison. It don't just happen with racism. It's not like, oh, they're just it's 2026. It's not like, oh, they're just trying to do this to us. No, they're doing this, period. You know what I'm saying? We have the black people in particular have the highest spending rate. You know what I'm saying? We are the biggest consumers. So they market to us more and a little differently, but they do it to everybody. So for myself, I just don't get caught up in it because I know what it is. I don't get frustrated by it. I don't like remove myself from the world like a hermit. I live within the world, but I'm aware enough to know what to indulge in and what not to indulge in. Because just because somebody lays the trap doesn't mean that I have to participate in it.
Mashallah, that's a beautiful answer, my brother. And basically, yeah, you're right. You know, you got to be able to recognize the illusions and the traps around you of the who, what, where, and why. Why is this stuff in our communities? How can we operate in the world, right? Be of the world, but not of it at the same time,
Yes.
right? And I think you laid it out in a beautiful and vivid manner, like a artist painting a picture on the canvas with everything you described so far.
Thank
And it basically goes to my next question, my brother, is that today's world, like, it's honestly just crazy how much stuff is out there. Um, for those that are getting started on the spiritual path, because ultimately it all comes back down to yourself, as even you described in the book.
you. Yeah.
Now, most people, they will be in their, like, I guess the identity stuff with the ego that comes in, where we're, let's say, looking for a group or a teacher or a sheikh or imam or whatever. Now, for those that are stuck in that paradigm, what do you tell them? Because even with me, I came to that same conclusion, is that, yeah, you just got to study yourself and better yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah. I don't really so in the book I was very particular, right? To I was very particular on how I gave my message because I didn't want nobody to read it and say, "Oh, he's this or he's that or this sounds," like no matter what background you come from, you can read my book and gain something from it. But I do give hints in the book of where some of this knowledge came from, and a brother like you, um, who's been through initiatory systems, you probably had a few guesses. So what I say to that is, if you want to be a Muslim, if you want to be a Christian, if you want to be a more, there's nothing wrong with that, because as I said earlier, every religion teaches the same truth. It's just different theologies and different allegories to teach you the same truth. People have to start somewhere. If you are anti-religion and you want to begin a spiritual journey, I would say wherever you choose to start is wherever you choose to start. It's not for me to tell a person where they should go based upon my own, I'm gonna say, biases, right? Because I am a part of a culture. I do study other things, but I'm not here to tell anybody where to go. My only advice is you have to get to a point where you do begin to study yourself. You have to get to a point, and how you do that is all the knowledge and all the information in which you're gaining, you have to relate it back to you. So if you a Muslim and you learn about Muhammad, somewhere down the line, those spiritual teachings and lessons that Muhammad taught has to be brought back. Same with if you're a Christian and you're studying Jesus, his teachings has to come back to self. And I think a lot of times people don't do that. They just look at the figure or they look at the religion and they say, well, this is what it is. Somewhere down the line, if you practice the silent work, all things in which you have learned, you have to bring it back to yourself. And that would be my only advice. I think from my mind now, through a level of maturity, because I wouldn't have said this a couple years ago, I think every religion is beautiful because I understand what every religion is saying. And I don't get caught up in the theology or the allegory, because I understand the principles and what it's teaching and what it's actually striving to do. It's only using allegory, parables, and symbolism to bring it back to yourself. So that's the real journey, is take whatever knowledge you receive and bring it back to you. And if you choose not to and you just want to have faith and you want to believe, then you free to do that too. Who am I to tell you, any individual, what to do? My only advice is for people who want to begin to silent work, or for people who have a inner calling or an inner feeling that there is more. Whatever knowledge and information you have gained, start to bring it back to yourself. And whatever can stand with you as truth, keep it. Whatever doesn't, let it fall away.
That is beautiful, brother, and that reminds me of Surah 2, verse 62 of the Holy Quran, where Allah basically tells you that it's not about what specific path you follow, but as long as you're an upright, righteous person, then on the day of judgment you shall have no grief or punishment. And I think you're absolutely right. Like any path that helps us become a better person, as long as we're growing and learning and not hurting self or others, I think that's indeed, we follow practically what we can apply to our lives and what helps us become better. And one beautiful thing that I really liked in your book is the concept of mastering the breath or meditation. And in the Sufi path, that's like really essential, right? Where you master the breath.
Mhm.
So in today's world, like mastering the breath, how has it helped you? And let's say for others in today's chaotic world and the consumerism and the news and the stress, how can it help others as well in terms of the silent work?
Uh, Breathing exercises is grounding. Um, it's grounded in ways because every emotion that a person goes through, the breath is different. And so, there's I always say control your breathing, control your thinking. And so a lot of times, you can always go back to the breath in moments of uncertainty or moments of anger or moments of anything. Study the breath. And the more conscious that you become of those things, you could begin doing breathing exercises and simply in your nose, out your mouth, right? Deep from the solar plexus, in your nose, out your mouth. It's grounding, it's soothing. And for people who go deeper and learn uh, more types of breathing exercises, it does bring different levels of premonition internally, which is why the science of breath. That's actually a book. They talk about prana and the vital life force. Once you get into things like that, whether it's through martial arts or through yoga or through meditation, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Indeed, indeed. And it's all about cultivating that inner discipline. And, I thank you for this. And which goes to my next question, my brother, is that if today was your last day here on earth, and
Mm.
in terms of your spiritual knowledge and all that you possess, what would you tell the people that love you, the ones that you love, and especially the world that we're dealing with today? What would you tell humanity and the world around you and those that love you?
That's a deep question. Um, I would just say be true to yourself and be fearless. Always strive, be fearless in your endeavors. Don't never, you know, cut yourself short in doing what you wanted, like what you aspire to do as a person. Don't sell yourself short. Do it. Be true to you. Be sincere. Um, and be righteous. Do the right thing. That's what I would tell. That's what I would say.
Alhamdulillah. And yeah, you're right, brother. That's exactly our purpose here in this human life is to do right by self and others. Alhamdulillah. And if there's anything I failed to ask you, please, the floor is yours.
Um, no, you did a great job. I do want to speak about the structure because I think that I always say, man, everything in the book and from front to back, you can find in other places, right? You may have to really dig and for certain things, but it's there. But the structure of the silent work is what makes the book what it is. It's what why I think that Salman Sheikh feels like it's one of the greatest books he's read because it's experiential. And what the structure of the book is it's a veiled chapter, a unveiled chapter, and a gate. And so the veiled chapter is, layered in symbolism, as we spoke about, right? It strikes the subconscious, it goes past the intellect, and it begins to work on you. And you know what I'm saying? And so the the unveiled chapter, it actually speaks to the intellect and the rational mind. So it grounds you in the inner experience. So the veiled and the unveiled chapter are like two keys that unlock the gate, which is the next chapter. So it's a veiled, unveiled, and then a gate, which the gate teaches embodiment. So it breaks down everything that was given to you in the veiled and the unveiled, and then it gives you a practice and teaches you how to embody those principles. That's what makes this book different than any other book you ever read. And that's the only thing I wanted to put.
And yeah, you're right, because the concept of unveiling, it's called the kashaf in Arabic in the Sufi path, and how even in the degree system, right, even in the Royal Arch degree, you in the Masonic system, you have the different veils, and if you're found worthy of a good character and background, then each veil is open for you
Mm,
until you see the holiness of the Lord and know thyself and know thy Lord. This is something that I've seen beautifully, beautifully broken down in this book.
yeah,
I've read so many books, I've been with so many teachers and paths, but the way that this book has touched my heart and basically brought it back to myself, this is highly commendable. And I asked Brother Knowledge King, like, how do people find you? How do they get this book? All your information, and I will put this in the description below as well.
thank you. Thank you, man, for the compliments of the book. I've been wanting to say that this whole time. I really appreciate it. So you can find me on Instagram, Knowledge Sincere, and then the Silent Work 777. I'm also on Threads, Knowledge Sincere. That's where I do a lot of my posting. You can order the book on all major platforms, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. But I also have my personal site, thesilentwork.com,
Okay.
and there you can find my blog where I write extra commentary. So anybody who's maybe wondering, do they really want to buy the book or not? If you need additional commentary, I have a blog that discusses different topics. It talks about symbolism and what it does to the subconscious mind. I got one for the Masons and people in initiatory orders. I got an article called "A Call Out to Initiates." I got for contemplative people, the world that you project, which talks about the inner workings. It talks about inner correspondence, the inner workings of self and what you see in your life. So yeah, the silentwork.com is where you can personally buy an autographed copy, a regular copy, or the ebook. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Alhamdulillah. And I will put all of this in the link in the description below. And please support our beloved brother and help get this information out there in a world where there's just so much, right, to consume in terms of content. Please look at this book and consider it, and not only read it but apply those teachings practically in your life, in addition to the dialogue that we were able to have today. So my brother, thank you for giving us your time, your light, your love, your brotherhood, and Allah as my witness. And in the all of the grand scheme of the things of the universe, the Akashic records, all of that stuff, your love and light was and time is appreciated.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, peace.